Hey, welcome to a new podcast. This is season 1, episode 1. That's assuming there's going to be a season 2 or an episode 2, but we're going to make that assumption of OPHERcoming the odds. Yes, that's not a typo. It does say OPHERcoming the odds because I'm sitting here with the absolute greatest guide in the history of Israeli guides, which is saying a lot.
Thank you very much.
Opher Rom. So,
Thank you.
Opher, welcome, man. It's our first podcast.
It's going to be epic.
It's going to be epic. So, yeah, for those of you that don't know, I'm Bobby Hawk. I pastor a church called Epic Church, and I met Opher, I don't know how many years ago it's been now, Opher. It's
7?
been 7-8 years ago on my first trip to Israel. And it was great because it was a large enough group. There were 2 guides because we had 2 buses. What I didn't realize was how important a guide in Israel is. And no criticism of the other guide. Good guy. That's not the point. But we had Opher on our bus, and I talked to people on the other bus and realized they were missing out on the amazing bus talks, right, as they've been known from Opher. So now that I've taken several groups to Israel over and over, we always request Opher. And every time at the end of the trip, people are like, hey, I'm not going to remember this stuff. You talked about so many cool things at the sites and on the bus. So this is going to be kind of our bus talks. And Opher and I were talking just a couple months back in Israel. Why don't we do a podcast?
Exactly.
So some of you might be watching on YouTube. Some of you might be listening. But again, this is Opher and Bobby, and we are OPHERcoming the odds because that's really what Israel's done, honestly, we were talking about it. So why not start, Opher, with tell us just briefly kind of how did you get into doing what you do, guiding groups in Israel?
My story is very strange. I have 2 lives. I have a life until the age of 21 and one after that. I
thought you said 2 wives.
No.
I was like, we're not into the biblical history yet, Opher. Let's stick with modern day. Sorry. Okay, 2 lives.
2
yes,
lives.
Go ahead.
The first one is up to the age 21, and then I had a horrific car accident where I lost 21 years of my memory, basically. Not getting into that at all, but it changed my life completely. And took a while to get over the psychological effects and everything else. And then when I was about 23 years old, sitting at home in my parents' house, they came in one day looking at me sitting at the couch doing nothing. And they said, go do something with your life. And I figured, so far over the last 2 years, traveling was a lot of fun. I don't know anything about Israel. Let's try tour guiding class. And I went in, and very surprisingly, it was one of the most riveting things I've ever done in my life. I found out that I love history, which is kind of funny because I flunked history in my former life in high school.
So there's hope. Any of you that flunked history, there's hope for you. Math, not so much, but history maybe.
It's amazing to find out what you really like when you're not forced to study it.
Yeah.
And then I got into a little bit of guiding at a specific site in Israel on the southwest corner of the Temple Mount. And I found out that not only do I love history, I love sharing history. And from there, once Israel opened up for tourism, because it was a rough time, Israel has some rough times here and there, I started taking tours in Israel, and I've been doing it basically as my only source of income for just about 20 years now.
Yeah, so this is exciting because we'll laugh, we'll make fun of each other, we'll have some fun. But I'm guessing, for the people listening also maybe are doing it not because they have to, because they want to. There's some interest in Israel. There's some interest in the history. There's interest in things that either they've heard you say, some of them maybe have been on trips with you, or they've heard somebody say, man, you should check this out, because it's really intriguing. And it goes beyond, so I'm a pastor, so it goes beyond the Bible, because we're talking about the land. We're talking about the history. We're talking about the culture. We're talking about so many things behind it, which is why I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor for season 1 of our podcast here, and it's the Center for Holy Land Studies, or the chls.org, and that's really what they focus on when they take trips over there: culture, land, the history. Get that backwards, I guess. Culture, history, land, and spirit. I was doing it in Hebrew there for a second. I was going backwards. But and Amy Flattery and her team do incredible trips. That's who I take all my trips through. So if you're looking to join a trip, go on a trip, maybe plan a future trip, check out thechls.org. They plan amazing trips, and Opher is one of the guides that you can request. Now, he's in high demand, and we always get him first. But so 20 years, and in those 20 years, you have honed your craft, because every time I go, I feel like it honestly, it gets better and better.
Yes.
So probably because I'm there, but
also because you never realize, but I just make stuff on the spot. So it's
what's your thing about memory? You're going to remember 10%.
Yes. So then we have the 10% rule.
10%
and out of
rule.
everything that I say on a tour, usually the tourists will remember maybe 10% if I'm lucky. Some a little bit more, some a little bit less. But
so I keep coming because I feel like if I learn 10% every time, I'm eventually going to know it all.
But the problem is I'm only giving you 10% of what I know. So you're going to have to come
There's
a
always
lot
a deficit.
more times.
There's always a deficit. Yeah, we've talked about that. All right. We're going to start this kind of episode. We'll try to keep all these episodes to about 30 minutes, but we're going to start this episode really with an Opher view. Listen, everything we do, Opher is going to tie into the word Opher because I'm having fun with it. So an Opher view of Israel. So where do we begin? I have an idea, but
we're going to begin at the beginning.
Okay, that's a great place.
There's nothing like starting at fresh, because that way we have a base for everybody to follow and nobody feels like he's left out. So when we talk about Pharaoh, or we talk about Abraham, and we talk about the Assyrians and the Babylonians, people have some kind of a framework. We don't know kind of what time of history we're talking about.
Yeah, and I'm going to interject sometimes with maybe a question or a follow-up, because I get these questions from people.
Sure.
So sometimes I'm like, okay, unpack that a little bit, but let's go. Let's go to the beginning.
All right. Now we go to Genesis, book 1, verse 1. It simply says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth is void and without form, and the Spirit of God is hovering. And in Jewish tradition, that event is a specific event, and it happened at a specific time. And we count 5,783 years nowadays since that event of creation. And the first thing to be created on earth is what we call the foundation stone. And this is the holiest place for the Jewish people back then, today, forever. When we bring the Ark of the Covenant up to Jerusalem, we bring it to that spot. When Abraham, even before the Ark, when Abraham is supposed to sacrifice his son, he's going to bring his son to that spot. The first temple is built there. The second temple is built there. God willing, the third temple will be built there. And today, Jewish people pray towards that spot. So if you are, in the United States, Israel, or the spot itself is to your east, you pray towards the east. If you're in, let's say, Saudi Arabia, not sure how many Jewish people will be in Saudi Arabia anytime soon, but theoretically, they'll pray north. And if you're in Israel, you pray towards Jerusalem. And if you're in Jerusalem, you still need to know where that specific place is, because that's the holy place. That's where everything was founded from.
And let me interrupt here for a second, because when you mention the calendar, that's one of the things that I think maybe some people, if they haven't been to Israel or they don't understand. So this episode is July of 2023. So just for reference in our calendar, but you guys, the years you're referring to, you're dating back to creation essentially.
Yes.
And that's why
we're dating back to creation. We have our own names for the months of the year. We have a different manner of counting the days in those months. And that's why sometimes you see that Passover sometimes fall on the 15th of April, but then next year it'll fall on the 23rd of March or somewhere in that area. Our calendars are not exactly aligned together. If you look biblically, we don't have names in the Bible for the months of the year. We have numbers. So it will be the 4th day of the 7th month or the 3rd day of the 2nd month. We adopted names instead of these numbers, but we're still basically using a different calendar than what the majority of the world is using. Now, if you take an Israeli newspaper, we'll have both dates, because the majority of the world does use July or June 2023, and we're aware of that. So we want to make you feel at home when you come to us. But we use our own different calendar.
Yeah, and what's interesting is, and that's still practice, I was over in Greece, and I was in an area in the northern part of Greece where there was a Jewish quarter that was still there. And up at the top of the buildings, the date of the building was in the Hebrew number.
And to make things even worse or even more complicated, because Judaism is very complicated, when you see the Hebrew dates, you're not going to see numbers. You're going to see letters, because the Hebrew letters have numeric value. So A would be 1, B would be 2, C 3, D 4. We call that geometry. And therefore, not only do we use numbers, but we also use letters, and they are interchangeable.
And we'll probably in a future podcast touch on geometry
Hopefully.
because
Yes,
it's fascinating.
it
so
is
we'll
fascinating.
get there. So, okay, foundation stone. I interrupted. Bam, Genesis 1.
Right. So 5,783 years since creation. We're going to skip the days of creation. We're going to skip all the horrible things that happened after creation and until Noah. The sons of God are coming down from heaven, and they're mixing with the earthly women, and giants roam the land, and all manner of depravity and horrible things are happening, immorality, and God is going to press the reset button. Basically, he's going to flood the world. He's going to save Noah, his children, their wives, and the animals, of course. And after a while, when the waters start going down, we're going to start humanity again with the children of Noah. So according to the Bible, we are all connected. Bobby here is like a very, very distant relative of mine in some way or another.
Somewhere on that big tree.
Yes,
Ofer
exactly. And that
tree
is actually
branches.
in the Bible. So when you look down the lineage of the three children of Noah, we have Shem, Ham, and Yefet. Now, you guys butcher my language.
Let me butcher it for you.
Yes, thank you.
Shem, Ham, and Japheth.
There you go. And you look at the names that they give you there. There are names that today are nations, like China. Okay, Mitzrayim is a name of one of the children of Shem, Ham, and Yefet, and Mitzrayim is modern-day Egypt. So all of these modern-day nations are found in the Bible. These are names of children that later on grow, procreate, and eventually become people, a people, the Egyptian people, the Philistine people, the Edomites. All of these people that you hear and you read about in the Bible, they are all there listed. Just need to read, and it's sometimes not a lot of fun to just read names of this begat.
Yeah, well, and honestly, I think a lot of times we skip over that because we're so far removed from that. We feel like that doesn't really apply, but it really does.
It does apply, and
to...
we are using these words. We're using the names from the Bible in our everyday language nowadays. A quick example would be anti-Semitism. A very simple word. If you're anti-Shem, Shem is the forefather of Abraham. Abraham is the forefather of the Jewish people today. You're anti-Shem, you're anti-Semite. The word Hebrew comes from a man called Ever. And this guy is, again, one of the forefathers of Abraham. So it's all there in the Bible, and we're not even aware usually that we're using biblical references.
Right. So we get to Noah.
Yes.
We're
going to start with Shem, and Shem is going to procreate and fill the land with his descendants, and one of these descendants is Abraham. Now, Abraham lives in what we would call modern-day Iran, Iraq, somewhere in that area. And have you ever lived in the desert for a very long time, Papi?
Man, I can make it a day, Ofer. You've been with me. You know that.
All right, so you'll have to trust me on this
I'm
one.
going to trust you on this
one.
But
if you live in the desert long enough, you'll start hearing voices. And apparently Abraham hears a voice. And the Bible doesn't tell us that this voice came to anybody else, but it does tell us that Abraham was the first one to accept this voice's offer. And the offer, not Ofer, the offer. Yes, the offer was to pick up his stuff and move to a promised land. And Abraham is doing that. He's going to say goodbye to everything he knows and loves and start walking along the water routes until he reaches a land called Canaan. Now, Canaan is modern-day Israel. Canaan is one of the descendants of Shem, Ham, and Yefet again. And during that time that Shem is procreating and filling the land, and he has Abraham eventually, we also have Canaan as one of the children of Noah, and then we have the Canaanites. And they're living there, and Abraham makes his way to Canaan, sees that relative to the desert that he was coming from, this is a place flowing with water. This is one of the strange things that people have a misconception about the land of Israel today. While it is very hot there, and we have 300 days of sun, when it rains, it pours down like there's no tomorrow. It's a very limited time frame.
Yeah.
But we actually get more rain in Tel Aviv and in Jerusalem than London does in a year.
Yeah, that's fascinating because now that I've been there and seen it, heard it, it makes sense. But yeah, honestly, it feels like, oh, it's the desert.
Right.
They don't
Camels
get rain.
taking you from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, right?
Yeah, but down when we visit like near the Dead Sea, and you
Yes.
talk about how sometimes that area is closed because the
of
rain
flooding.
coming off the mountains
Yes.
and the flooding, and you're like, you
Right.
got to be kidding me.
Now comes the real problem. Because if it only rains in a specific time of the year, you really need to know where that water is going to be, how to reach that water, how to divert that water to where you need it. And when you're living in an area which is, in fact, 60% desert, literal desert, water is life. There's just no way around it. Water is definitely life.
Yeah.
And relative, as I said, to where he comes from, this place is flowing with water. Whether it's underground or however you get to it, it's there. And he settles down, and he's going to have quite a few kids. Most people always remember Abraham having 2 kids. He's got Ishmael, and then he's got Isaac. But there's another notation there a little bit later, and he gets remarried after his first wife dies, and she gives him 6 more children. So Abraham altogether actually has 8 children, but the first 2 are the most important ones. And we're going to continue with our friend Isaac. Isaac is traditionally the one that is going to be taken to the Holy of Holies, to the foundation stone where Abraham is supposed to sacrifice him, and he doesn't. This is more of a metaphor than anything else. It's supposed to show us that contrary to all the pagans or all the people around Abraham who believe in many gods, the Israelite God does not want human sacrifices. And that's why we have the ram in the story. And since then, the Jewish people also blow a ram's horn. The idea is to remind us of the binding of Isaac. I can't say sacrifice because obviously he wasn't sacrificed. And Isaac, he's going to have a couple of kids of his own, and one of them is Jacob. And Jacob is going to wrestle God and not lose. Hey, he didn't win, but he didn't lose.
Yeah, so that's interesting, right? Because we talked about that. That's that whole idea of he didn't win, but he didn't lose.
Yes.
And we'll probably come back to that in the future. But before we go too far with Jacob and Esau, kind of bring us back a little bit, because the whole Isaac-Ishmael thing, right? That is where these world religions, in a sense, I mean, we all have Abraham.
Yes.
So Christianity, Judaism, Islam.
Yes.
Abraham, central figure. The difference, if you will, if we want to go with Islam and then Judaism and even Christianity later, has to do with which son the promise came through.
Yes.
So
exactly.
Touch on that just a little bit, because I think sometimes our listeners, maybe you're Christian, you don't understand that. I guess maybe if we have Islamic listeners, maybe it's equally true. But it seems like you bring a perspective that sometimes Christians just don't think about, and that is simply that, yeah, they still believe it's Abraham's son that the promise is given. They just believe it's a different son.
They actually believe in all of the biblical stories. When we talk about Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, we all have the same base. We all have the same characters. We all have the same stories. Usually we even have the same places that the Jewish text talks about. So when the text says that Abraham took his son and was supposed to sacrifice him, Jews, Christians, and Muslims will all agree. When it says that he takes them to a specific spot, everybody will agree. But which son was it? And I've been trying to be very politically correct. I said that Abraham took his son. Now the question is, which son? And Islam will come and say, well, he took his firstborn. And the Bible clearly states that the firstborn son of Abraham is, in fact, Ishmael. So as far as Islam is concerned, Abraham took Ishmael and was supposed to sacrifice. So it's the same story. It's the same event, usually the same place, but a different character. And because Judaism is the base, and it only works in this way. Everything that the Jewish people will say is holy will automatically be holy to Christians, will automatically be holy to Islam, not the other way around. Not everything holy to Islam will be holy to Christians and Jews. But the name Ibrahim, which is Abraham, is one of the most common names in the Muslim world today. Yusuf is Joseph, Arun is Aaron, Musa is Moses, Isa. You go around in the Muslim world today and you'll see millions of people named Isa. Isa is Jesus.
Yeah.
As far as Islam is concerned, Jesus was a prophet. Moses was a prophet. All the prophets of the Bible are acceptable. And then the big difference with Islam is that Muhammad was another prophet after Christianity, after Jesus, that is.
Yeah. And not to get too lost in this, but just as kind of a follow-up point to that, and that's part of why Jerusalem, and maybe we'll talk about this in a future episode, but Jerusalem is still very holy to Islam.
Jerusalem is holy to Islam, period. And it doesn't matter whether Muhammad was there. It doesn't matter whether the Quran mentions the name Jerusalem specifically or not. The second we say in Judaism that a place is holy, automatically it becomes holy to Christians, automatically it becomes holy to Islam. And once Jerusalem becomes holy to the Jewish people, and by the way, God never said Jerusalem is a holy city. God only states twice in the entire Jewish text about a place that is holy. He tells Moses The first time when Moses sees a burning bush, take your sandals off, this is holy ground. And that sentence about a place being holy ground is mentioned only once again in the entire Jewish text, and that's in the book of Joshua. When Joshua crosses the Jordan River before they conquer the city of Jericho, he meets an angel of the host, or I guess it's an angel of the host. And that angel tells Joshua, take your shoes off, this is holy ground. Those are the only two places that God or the angel of God say about anywhere, this is holy ground.
Exodus
Everything else,
Joshua.
yes, everything else we made holy. And there's a wonderful rule in religion, once you make a place holy, you can't unholy it. That's it. So once David, with the help of the prophet of his time, decides this is where the Holy of Holies is, this is the foundation stone, this is where the Ark of the Covenant is going to be, this is where the temple will be built by Solomon, that place becomes holy to Jews. And as I said a couple of minutes ago, holy to Jews, holy to Christians, holy to Islam. So why is Jerusalem important or holy to Islam to begin with? Because it's holy to the Jewish people.
That's fascinating. Again, if it's holy to the Jews, holy to Christians, holy to Islam, but obviously it doesn't work backwards.
Of course.
Right. So
because we're starting with the base. We are the root. You're the tree.
So Abraham, so Isaac, Ishmael. Now we're on Isaac. We're on Jacob, Esau.
Yes. So we said that Jacob is going to wrestle God and not lose. And by the way, that's why the Jewish people are not good at sports anymore. We've reached the top. Once you fight God and you don't lose, that's it. We don't have to prove anything anymore, right?
No reason to prove anything in the Olympics. Over.
So from that point on, from that point on, we are the people of the book. All right. But once he fights God and he doesn't lose, we change his name from Jacob into Israel. And this is where the name Israel comes from, which means that Abraham, in fact, is not an Israelite. Abraham precedes the Israelite people. Abraham is not a Jew. Because the word Jew comes later on from the children of Jacob, or Israel. And Israel is going to get married, and he's going to have a bunch of kids. And we count eventually 12 sons. And these are the 12 children of Israel. And once they procreate and they fill the land, the 12 children of Israel become what everybody knows today as the 12 tribes of Israel. Now, before they're tribes, there's sibling rivalry. I'm sure you know this, even though you don't want to admit it, but apparently definitely not live. But you have kids of your own.
I have.
And you love girls. Both of them dearly. You like one of them better. That's the way it is with parents.
Depends on the day.
Yeah, exactly. That's fine. And apparently Israel is playing favorites. And he has this one son that he clearly likes more than he likes the other ones. This is Joseph. And
the difference is he makes sure all the other kids know it.
Yes,
we might do it a little bit more privately.
Biblical days is a little different than modern day. So the other brothers are jealous, and everything seems to be going okay. A little bit of sibling rivalry here and there, but then Israel is going to do the unthinkable, and he's going to give his favorite son some very fancy pajamas. That was it. The other 11 brothers can't handle it anymore. They have to get rid of him. They're going to throw him into a pit. They're going to bloodstain the pajamas and show it to their father as though a wild animal killed his favorite son, when in fact, they're going to sell Joseph off as a slave to the Midianites, who in turn bring him over to Egypt, where he's incarcerated. It's not the end of the story, obviously. Joseph makes a name for himself even while he's in jail as a dream interpreter. This is a big deal. And when the Pharaoh of Egypt has a dream that no one else can interpret, it's Joseph's time to shine. And our friend Joseph is going to sit and listen as the Pharaoh talks about 7 very skinny cows swallowing whole 7 very fat cows next to the Nile River. Joseph understands that the 7 skinny cows are famine. It's going to be a drought, and they're going to swallow 7 fat cows who represent 7 years of good agriculture. So 7 years of good agriculture followed by 7 years of a drought. We need to prepare. We can't just go around, wasting all the food from the first 7 good years. We need to build storerooms. We need to allocate whatever it is. And when the 7 years of a drought begin, the Egyptians are safe. The Egyptians are good. But a famine in this time area, in this region, it's not just Egypt, it's the entire region, including the land of Canaan. And the 11 brothers are looking for food. They don't know what to do. They hear that maybe there's something in Egypt. They make their way there. Joseph actually remembers and recognizes them. They don't see Joseph for who he is at this point. And he tells them, listen, we got plenty of food for all of you. We even have enough food for your entire family. So go back, bring your parents, bring your wives, children, if you got them, come back here. And that's exactly what they do. And as they return, there's a big family reunion. Everybody realizes who Joseph is. And because he's in such a high position right now, he is the #1 advisor to the Pharaoh. Basically, everything he says goes. And as far as the non-Egyptian goes, this is as high in society as you can reach. So his family is also basically treated like royalty. And I got to say, the first couple of 100 years are apparently very good years for the Israelites. These 12 brothers bring their family. They're going to procreate over the next 200 years, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. This is when they're becoming tribes. 200 years go by. Joseph is gone. We have a new Pharaoh, and he doesn't even remember who Joseph was. This is what the Bible tells us. And he sees a very powerful people, a large population of non-Egyptians at a very high place in society. He's afraid of a rebellion. So what is he going to do? Nip it in the bud. He is going to take action and enslave them. And now begins over 200 years of slavery in Egypt for the Israelites. And this is when we start trying to find someone to get us out of our misery.
Yeah. So we've covered, for in a short amount of time, we've covered the entire book of Genesis, basically.
Pretty much, yes.
Hundreds and hundreds of years.
Yes.
And that's going to really serve as that's kind of part one. Mm-hmm. So that's just kind of the kickoff. And what I think I hope our listeners are grasping is how the story that you're telling is the same story that you're going to read in Genesis.
Absolutely.
We're highlighting maybe some things that people didn't understand, some connections that they didn't realize. But as we continue to go through, this is the story of the Bible. I mean, you can't tell the story of Israel without telling the story of the Bible,
exactly.
But you can't tell the story of the Bible without telling the story of Israel. I mean,
they're hand in hand.
Hand in hand. And so I think we'll see that more and more. So let me just kind of do a little shout out again. So CHLS, or the Center for Holy Land Studies, again, our sponsor for this season. It's funny I say this season. We know there's one season. We don't know if we're going to get canceled or not, but my understanding is you and I are the only ones that can cancel us. So I think there's a pretty good shot at season 2. But if you've ever wanted to go to the Holy Land, it's an incredible experience. In fact, I'll probably say this every episode because I believe it to be true, but it takes the Bible from black and white to color. That's what Absolutely. I try to tell people. So you'll read places, you'll see places. Honestly, you probably didn't even notice that you read before or saw before, and all of a sudden you can picture that, you can visualize it. I think it was Jerome that said, basically, visiting the land of the Bible is the 5th gospel, and it's what opens up the other 4 gospels. Describe what you say when it comes to Israel. It's you get to hear the Bible with your eyes. With your eyes.
Yes.
Hear it with your eyes. And so if you've ever considered it, check out thechls.org. Lots of trip opportunities. Maybe you're a pastor, maybe somebody that would like to put a trip together. Man, that's fantastic too. Contact them. It is a great way. And we'll talk about this a little bit more, Opher, maybe in a future episode. But to those that are considering it, the one question I get almost before anything else is it safe? And we'll unpack that maybe more in future episodes. But here's what I would say. It's as safe as anywhere else I've been in the world.
Sure.
And I would say I feel safer when I'm in Israel than I oftentimes do feel downtown in the city that I live in. And there's a lot of reasons why. We won't get in this episode specifically, but we wouldn't continue to take trips to a place that we felt unsafe. Now, anything can happen anywhere in the world, so there's no guarantees. But if we're talking about just feeling safe, being safe, I can honestly say I've never felt at one point in Israel unsafe after all the trips I've been to.
Well, except for when Benny drives.
Well, yeah, our bus driver, different story. But as far as the land itself and the people. So, yeah, we'll talk about that more. But, again, thechls.org, check them out and really consider. Don't mark yourself out, maybe too young, too old. Listen, you can probably make a trip like that happen, and it's pretty incredible experience. So this has been an Opher view of Israel Part 1.
Part 1.
Join us next month for Part 2. We don't know how many parts there's going to be when it comes to the overview. We're just going to keep going until we get through it. But Opher's got plenty more to talk about, and we're excited about that. So join us again next month. That'll be August. We'll release Part 2 or Episode 2 of Season 2. And whether you're watching, whether you're listening, We're so excited that you've joined Opher and myself for OPHErcoming the odds. And we hope to see you again soon.
It's going to be amazing.
Amazing.